the president yesterday extended the Iran ceasefire. Is the president being played by Iran? This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report on AM 680 WRKO. The number here is 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. All we have heard for the past 2 weeks is not going to extend the ceasefire. We're going to have to bomb. Not going to extend that ceasefire. The bombing is coming. As late as yesterday morning, as a matter of fact, President Trump told CNBC during a call-in phone interview that he expects bombing to resume in Iran after the ceasefire ends today because he expects the peace talks in Pakistan to fail. Cut number 60, please, Mike.
You're saying that you need at least the prospects for a signed deal today and tomorrow, or else you would resume bombing Iran.
Well, I expect to be bombing because I think that's a better attitude to go in with, but we're ready to go. I mean, the military is raring to go. They are absolutely incredible. I built the military in my first term. I'm using it now. The military, when I took it over from Barack Hussein Obama, it was so depleted, so sad. And I built it in my first term. You remember those big numbers. You talked to me about it once. That's a lot of money for military. I built it. We did a great job with our military, and we're using it now and rebuilding it, too. We've done a lot of rebuilding also in my first year of the second term. But we have we have the most powerful military in the world. Everybody knows it.
Tough talk. Don't you think we expect to be bombing because the peace talks will fail? The peace talks never got started. J.D. Vance is still in Washington, D.C. He has not left for Islamabad. And the reason for the bomb threats, President Trump said, was that Iran had already violated the existing ceasefire numerous of times. And, how can we trust them? They keep violating the ceasefire. And J.D. Vance was supposed to depart for Pakistan yesterday, but went to the White House for policy meetings instead. He and the other members of the delegation were all at the White House yesterday. So President Trump went on to say in this same interview that, hey, a good deal is still to be had. Cut 31C, I think it is, Mike.
Iran can get themselves on a very good footing if they make a deal. They can make themselves into a strong nation again, a wonderful nation again. They have incredible people. But they seem to be, bloodthirsty. They're led by some very, very unfortunately tough people. And I don't mean tough in a good way. I think it's very negative for the country because we're much tougher than they are, like not even close. But they have to use reason, and they have to use common sense, and they can get themselves into a great position to make themselves into a great country, but a legitimate country, not a country based on death and horror.
So he seems to be talking about rebuilding there, doesn't he? Like, Iran can rebuild greater, better and greater. But he, one hand he says, I'm going to bomb. Next breath he says, Iran can still get a good deal with this. Cut 31B.
Well, as I said 2 days ago when they said they won't send them, I said they'll be sending them. They have no choice but to send them. What I think is that we're going to end up with a great deal. I think they have no choice. We've taken out their Navy. We've taken out their Air Force. We've taken out their leaders, frankly, which does complicate things in one way, but these leaders are much more rational. It is regime change, no matter what you want to call it, which is not something I said I was going to do, but I've done it. Indirectly, maybe, but I've done it. And I think we're in a very strong negotiating position to do what other presidents should have done during a 47-year period.
So he keeps going back and forth because after he said this on CNBC, he wrote on Truth Social that he can't end the Iran blockade without a deal unless we blow up the rest of the country. Specifically, this is his, he says Iran does not want their crucial oil passway, the Strait of Hormuz, to be closed. He says, claiming that the country only shut the strait to save face after the U.S. blockaded it. This is exactly what he wrote. He said, Iran doesn't want the Strait of Hormuz closed. They want it open so they can make $500 million a day, which is therefore what they are losing if it's closed. They only say they want it closed because I have it totally blockaded. Closed! Exclamation point. So they merely want to save face. People approached me 4 days ago saying, sir, Iran wants to open up the strait immediately, but if we do that, there can never be a deal with Iran unless we blow up the rest of the country, their leaders included. Of course, you remember that the president announced last week that the Strait of Hormuz had reopened due to the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon, claiming that the U.S. blockade of the strait would continue. And then the following day, Iran fired on an oil tanker passing through the strait, which led to the president's announcement on Sunday that the U.S. Navy had blown a hole in an Iranian ship that tried to evade the U.S. blockade. That's, it just back and forth. And then late yesterday came the news that the president will extend the ceasefire with Iran until its leaders can come up with a unified proposal. And he also said the naval blockade will continue regardless of whether there's a ceasefire or not. Wow. Are you surprised? Was this a reasonable thing to do, extend the ceasefire? Is this the rational humanitarian thing to do? Is this the way to get everlasting peace with Iran? Or is the president being played? And I'm actually going to make that the poll question today, which you can take on X at the Kuhner Report or at WRKO.com/Kuhner. And it's brought to you by Mario's Siding and Roofing. The question is the president being played by Iran? What do you think? Because, all we've heard for the last 2 weeks is, no, there's not going to be, I'm not going to extend the ceasefire. No more extension of the ceasefire. I'm going to bomb them. If they don't do it, we're just going to have to go back to bombing. And then yesterday at 4 o'clock, I'm going to extend the ceasefire. Does this seem like a good idea to you? Or is this just optimism run amok? Does the president really just not want to bomb? I mean, he's shown that he will. He's done it. Is the blowback that he got from doing that scaring him off? Does he really think he can negotiate with these people? What is going on here? Does he think that this is a good idea? Really, legitimately? Is he just too hopeful for words? And is Iran playing on those hopes? Is the president being played? That's what I want to know. Let's go to the phones. Bob in Woburn, what do you think? Is the president being played?
I'm really surprised because he turned out to be a sissy puke.
Okay.
He's giving in to them. I want to see Iranian bodies piled 10 feet high and power plants blown up and everything else.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to solve it.
Okay. Well,
they're playing for a sucker.
Thank you for the call, Bob. I appreciate that very much. That's one interpretation of what is happening, that the president has chickened out. Trump does not strike me as a chicken. He has never struck me as a chicken. So, I don't necessarily know why he does the things he does. I don't necessarily agree with everything he does, but I don't think a lack of courage has ever been an issue with President Trump. I think he has demonstrated that over and over and over again. So, while I appreciate your point of view, Bob, I don't think, and if you think I'm wrong, if you think Bob is right, let me know. But I really don't think that is the answer to this question. I think there's something else at play here. And the appearance is that the president is trusting that the Iranians can be rational and reasonable and are trustworthy, that he can in fact discuss negotiations, or J.D. Vance and friends can go and discuss negotiations, and they can be held to a treaty or any kind of agreement, any kind of ceasefire. But they haven't demonstrated that so far. So I tend to think if it's anything, it's optimism. It's too much optimism. And he really has shown that he does value human life and really does not want to risk human life when he doesn't have to. Are the Iranians playing on that with him? Is this more along, I mean, seriously, because I find it very disconcerting. After spending last week saying there will be no ceasefire extension, get the B-52s ready, President Trump at 4 p.m. yesterday extended the ceasefire. This announcement came after J.D. Vance's trip to Islamabad for the second round of peace talks was put on hold because Tehran had failed to respond to American negotiating positions. And then shortly after that, the president posted this. Based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, not unexpectedly so, and upon the request of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, we have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. I have therefore directed our military to continue to blockade and in all other respects remain ready and able, and will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded one way or the other. What do you think? Is the president being played by Iran with an assist from Pakistan? Is that what's happening here? Did he do the right thing? That's kind of open-ended, don't you think? Until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded one way or the other. Doesn't that sound like there's, no end date for that? So I repeat the question. Do you think the president's being played? Andy in Milford, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Andy?
Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning, sir.
Well, Sandy, I want to just give a little bit of history to this.
Mm-hmm.
Back in Trump 1.0, Trump's first administration, if you remember, Trump, they had Iran and the mullahs isolated economically, and what happened and of course you had the Abraham Accords going on too, but a lasting peace was starting to take hold in the Middle East, and it was clear to me the reason why that was. The reason is because the Iranian mullahs and their terror proxies throughout the Middle East were broke. They just simply did not have the resources to sustain their terrorist activities. Now, when Joe Biden and his crew got in there, the money flowed to Iran and the mullahs was restored. And then from there, terrorism exploded. And in my humble opinion, that's a big part of what enabled October 7. Now, bring it forward to the present time. I believe the naval blockade has the potential to be very effective because I think we have an opportunity to achieve, once again, the economic warfare against the mullahs that was achieved in Trump 1.0. And I'm convinced now more than ever that economic warfare is what's going to be most effective against these mullahs. And I would just humbly advise the president to maintain that naval blockade and just let the economic warfare do its work. Now, as far as whether or not President Trump is being played, very real possibility. I mean, just all these actors in the Middle East, can you really trust what they say? Remember what President Reagan said in his time about trust but verify.
Yeah. So I think I think the president agrees with you on a number of levels. I certainly do, and that is that President Trump is not lifting the blockade, so that's in place. And the Secretary of the Treasury, Bessent, has come out and announced even more stringent economic sanctions. And he, in a press conference last week, actually explained what some of those were and said that he thought those were actually more effective than kinetic warfare, as he put it, which means military warfare. So they are in like mind with you, Andy, absolutely. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is that, he may be extending the ceasefire, meaning he's not going to bomb, but at the same time, he's putting a ferocious stranglehold on their economy. And are you saying that actually might be more effective and will bring them to heel faster than a bombing might?
That is absolutely what I'm suggesting, because if Trump, again, one thing we learned in Trump 1.0, these actors can't carry on their terror activities if they're broke.
Yeah, without money. No, that's right, Andy. And we did see the cessation of that during Trump 1, and then all of a sudden we saw it starting to come back a little bit after that, and that, of course, was because the sanctions had been lifted against them by President Biden. There's a ceasefire again with Iran. He announced it last night at 4:00 after. For the last 10 days or so, we've been hearing no ceasefire, get the bombs ready, no ceasefire. And then last night, before J.D. Vance even had a chance to get on Air Force Two to head off to Islamabad, he said nope. And he held J.D. back at the White House, didn't even send anybody over to see what the Iranians had to say, just announced the ceasefire. And what I was saying before the break is it sounded to me like it was a kind of open-ended ceasefire until Iran submits a unified proposal and it has been turned down or accepted one way or the other. To me, sounded very, very open-ended. And so my question to everybody is, do you think that the president is being played by Iran, by, not declaring the red line stepped over, basically, by saying, we'll give them another chance, after they have shown time and time again that they can't be trusted, even if they were to come to an agreement? You think you can trust them to uphold their part of it? They haven't so far. Let's go to Russ in Canton. Russ, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Rachel. How are you today? Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome, but my name is not Rachel, so I appreciate that. My name is Sandy.
Sandy, that was tongue-in-cheek. I was pretending to call the Rachel Maddow.
Oh, got you. So sorry. I stepped on your joke. I'm so sorry, Russ.
That's okay. I know you're covering for Chris Hayes this week. Now, listen, I just wanted to call in. I've been listening to the dialogue for weeks, and I've been following this very carefully.
Yeah.
I'm an adamant supporter of President Trump. And I'm hearing everybody calling, and I'm hearing all this stuff and all the negative, and I get it. You're hearing all these crazy things. It's going this way, it's going that way. But what I know and what I believe anyway is that we haven't had a guy in the White House who's been working for us like this guy ever before. We haven't had anyone pursuing our interests around the world like this guy before. People were sending him pallets of cash and electronic transfers of cash. People were removing sanctions. People were letting these lunatics over there build up, strengthen, and become the menaces that they are, and cause death, destruction, and damage, and threatening and ruining the neighborhood. And finally, somebody has the cojones to get up and do something about it. And they wiped out the weapons, and they're working on this. They're working on it feverishly. We're putting our military assets to good use over there. We're not fooling around. I think what's happening right now is you have a normal, reasonable, logical person at the helm saying, we're navigating this treacherous water with these crazy people. What do? Do you blow up the bridges and the plants while the people are all the civilians are circling around them? Do you tell the people to rise up when you know they're going to be killed? I'm watching very carefully. I think everything he's doing and the people working for him are very good. I think they're all doing the best things, the right things for the time, and it's a moving target. And I think we should all just take a breath, realize just how good things are for us normal, conservative American patriots and what this guy has done, and cut him some slack and say, let's see what develops. I trust him implicitly, if that's the right word. And I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Well, I appreciate that, Russ, and I agree with you that Donald Trump gives every indication of being the hardest working president who puts the interests of the American people first. I completely agree with that statement. That doesn't mean that he's perfect. It doesn't mean that he's not a human being. That doesn't mean that he can't make mistakes, and it doesn't mean that he can't be played. My question is he being played in this particular instance? I agree with you too. He is a reasonable, rational person, and probably one of the most rational human beings I've ever seen in my life. But he's dealing with irrational people who are crazy, who have demonstrated multiple times that they cannot be trusted, that they don't, it doesn't matter what they agree to because they're just going to turn around and do whatever they want anyway. So is it really a rational, reasonable thing to negotiate with these people over and over again and expect a different result? Because they keep breaking the ceasefire. They keep breaking their word. One of the reasons why we're in this mess now to begin with is that the agreement that President Obama signed with them, first of all, had issues, and the sunset clauses were bad, and there were other things that, loosening the sanctions gave them money in which to support terrorism and build a nuclear program for military use under the guise of a civilian program. And they couldn't be trusted when they were treated in a trusting manner by the Obama administration. What makes you think that they can be trusted, or what makes the president think they can be trusted now, no matter what deal J.D. Vance comes home with? Does anybody really think they're going to abide by it when they've demonstrated for 40 years that they're not going to abide by anything? So that's my issue, Russ, and why I asked the question. And I'm not denigrating President Trump, who I respect a great deal. What I'm saying is he's not perfect. Is he being played in this particular issue?
Just one more quick thing. So thank you, by the way. And I would just say this. I think what we're going to find out down the road, what we're going to watch happen is we're going to get the best we're going to get. I don't think they're playing him. I wouldn't be surprised if our intelligence is monitoring Democrat congressmen and senators and other people out there calling up the Iranians and saying, hey, don't do it. Don't. I bet you there's something going on behind the scenes. I mean, Obama and his ilk, all those people. I bet you they'll find it, because we keep getting close. We keep getting close, and then it falls apart and it falls apart. Meanwhile, what he's saying is he's keeping everybody guessing, including them. We're positioning military assets. We are planning. We're working out, what do you do now? What do you do now? In a moving target needs to be considered that way. So many times we've done just the thing that somebody set out to do, and it ended up being the wrong thing. I think it's going to work out okay, and I think we're going to have to suffer and worry about it some more. But this guy is looking out for America's best interest, regardless of what anybody says. And so I say it's going to be all right. That's what I really believe. They're not playing him. They know exactly what's going on. And it's probably John Kerry, what's his name, Barack Obama, and Biden, if he knows how to use that phone. We're gonna find out where this is being undermined by us. I guarantee it. It's going to be all right. I think we're going to be good. Thanks for taking my call.
Well, thank you for calling, Russ. I appreciate it very much. Now, I don't trust the Democrats either, Russ, to be honest with you, but I trust Iran even less. And so when Iran tells me that, or when the president tells me he thinks he can trust them again, I'm like, I'm not so sure. At some point, it is crazy to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And that, to me, is the level that we're getting at right now. I just checked on our website to see how the poll's going. The poll question, which you can take at X at the Kuhner Report or on WRKO.com/Kuhner, is President Trump being played by the Iranians? And you know what it is right now? This is very interesting because this never happens. It's 50-50. It's 50%. 50% say yes, 50% say no. It's very rare to have a 50-50 poll question. We strive for them, but we very rarely get them. So I'm asking you, do you think that President Trump is being played by the Iranians when he extended last night at 4 o'clock or last evening at 4 o'clock the ceasefire yet again? And it's an open-ended extension that basically says until we've had a chance to review the Iranians' proposal, and the Iranians haven't given a proposal. So, who knows when they're going to give a proposal. In fact, the Iran's parliament speaker and lead negotiator, Mohammad Bakir Kalibaf, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not the best at pronouncing Middle Eastern names. This is his response to the ceasefire. Trump's ceasefire extension means nothing. The losing side cannot dictate terms. Honest to God. He just called us the losing side. The losing side cannot dictate terms. The continuation of the siege is no different from bombardment and must be met with a military response. He is saying that the blockade means that they have the rights to fight back. So they're not going to abide by any ceasefire. And then this is how it continues. Moreover, Trump's ceasefire extension is certainly a ploy to buy time for a surprise strike. The time for Iran to take the initiative has come. That's their lead negotiator saying this. One, that they're winning the war. That the blockade is going to be met by military force, and Iran is going to take the initiative now in striking the U.S. That is the Iranian response to President Trump extending the ceasefire at 4 o'clock yesterday. Does that sound like they're ready to negotiate to you? I mean, the losing side can't dictate terms. How much more of a Monty Python's Black Knight can you be than that statement there? I mean, I ask the question in all seriousness. Is President Trump being played by the Iranians? President Trump has extended the ceasefire with Iran and has made it somewhat open-ended. Why would he do that? Iran has shown no good faith. Not only did they not travel to Islamabad to negotiate with J.D. Vance for negotiations part 2, but their lead negotiator put out a statement saying, let the battle continue, basically. They had agreed to meet in Pakistan for a second round of talks. It was the same negotiators meeting at, the same table, basically, to discuss the same issues. So I don't know what anybody thought was going to be different this time, as I just referenced a few minutes ago. I think it's crazy repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Isn't that actually the definition of crazy? Don't forget that the Iranians, led by these same people, Galbaf and Abbas, Arachi, agreed to allow traffic through the Strait of Hormuz unmolested. These are the same guys that Vance would have been talking to this time. And then the regime claimed that the agreement was supposed to include Lebanon, which the U.S. disputed, but still the President and Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, arranged a ceasefire there as well to make them happy. And the Iranians responded to that effort by firing at commercial traffic that attempted to use the strait. And that's at the point where President Trump imposed the naval blockade until all negotiations conclude. Iran has violated the ceasefire constantly. In fact, you could actually term it that they've never abided by the terms of the ceasefire ever, and that it should have been considered a non-starter from the beginning. So why extend it? Why are you extending it? It just makes me wonder: is the president too honest a man? Is he too, I don't know if the word is appropriate or not, but is he too righteous, basically? Is he just too kind, considerate? He's brilliant, but is he too concerned with human life? Is he too concerned? And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but I mean, is he so worried about people getting hurt? Is he so concerned about being honest and forthright and upright in negotiations, which is what he is in negotiations, that he is now being played by the Iranians? That's my question. Victor in Georgetown, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Victor?
Sandy, I'm doing great. Always great to hear you on the air.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that it sounds like Baghdad Bob has a job announcing for Iran. If you remember, during the Iraq War, Baghdad Bob said, hey, there's no sign of the Americans, as the American tanks were rolling behind him.
Right behind him, literally over his shoulder with the American flag flying off the tanks. I remember that so well, Victor.
True. And I think that all of us Americans should just understand that Iran is in the operating room and our military is standing on their oxygen line. And it's at our will that they either survive or don't survive. And I just want to share something. The brilliance of President Trump, which will be escaped, the average left-wing lunatic will never understand this, is that he just took a barrage of heat from the Pope regarding his, unworthiness as a leader because of the conflict and whatever. So what does President Trump do? He shows patience. He shows composure. He takes time. He gives Iran another chance. Winning back those people that were on the bubble as to whether they were believing in Trump's strategy or not. Tremendous benefit. Just giving a little bit of time to win back, to undo the damage that the Pope had perpetrated on us. Another thing is that Pakistan, who is the intermediary here, is more, leaning towards Iran than they lean towards us. Plus, they're a nuclear power, and he's accommodating them. That they're putting pressure, on him, saying, "Hey, listen, let's give these guys a little bit of a break." So he's accommodating them, and I think that. Wile E. Coyote just had the anvil dropped on his head again by the Roadrunner. And I'll end with this. When I was in Southeast Asia, there was a group called Air America and Flying Tiger Airlines. I was with the Flying Tigers. We're a helicopter crew. And what they did, they were mercenaries. And a mercenary is someone that they relinquish their U.S. citizenship, and they're fighters, and they get the job done, and they work with the local patriots to fight back, if you will. A lot of people don't realize before Japan got into the World War II against America, they had killed over 20 million Chinese, and had it not been for Air America, they would have. Everyone in China would be speaking Japanese right now, but that is going on right now. We are working with our mercenaries, are working with the guerrillas, if you will, of the Persian people, helping them, arming them, training them, setting up communication for when this is going to end at some point. And people just have to realize there are a lot of levels of things going on that they're not going to break out to us until the books come out a year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I think he's doing a great job. Is he perfect? No. There's only one guy that was perfect, but he is working for the American people. That's what I believe.
I do believe, Victor, that Donald Trump does what he thinks is best for the American people. I don't doubt that. I really don't. But in this particular case, and you maybe put your finger on it when you're talking about outside influences, meaning the Pakistanis saying, hey, give them more time. Or maybe, is he still stinging from the Pope, saying that, calling him a warmonger and a tyrant, even though the Pope walked that back, saying, because he got such a bad response from people for calling Donald Trump a tyrant. So I don't like the idea of President Trump being a little gun shy because the Pope had criticized him, and I hope that's not one of the reasons why he's deciding to do a ceasefire. It just appears to me, and I like your idea of Air America helping the Iranian people get ready to rise up, but we've seen no evidence of that at the moment. As much as I want that to happen, I think it's wishful thinking, because we've seen no efforts by any kind of guerrilla anything in Iran. And I think these people have been kept down for so long, I'm not sure they know how to fight back anymore, which is why, of course, your point is that they would need someone like Air America to help them. But we've seen no evidence of that whatsoever. I mean, the war is just about, the conflict is done. If you're the Iranian spokesman, you say Iran is one. If you're anybody else, you say, yeah, no, I think it's the U.S. But I think that it looks to me like President Trump just wants so badly to have a negotiated peace as opposed to a military peace that he's letting the Iranians run roughshod over him again, because they keep showing over and over and over again that they can't be trusted. How can you negotiate with somebody, Victor, who can't be trusted and and this isn't just like you think they can't be trusted. They have proven they can't be trusted over and over again.
I think that your point is well made, and American people are now watching to see what Iran does, and when they do not make a good faith effort to resolve this, they are going to be without any power plants for quite a long time. And
so you think he's going to bomb them after all, basically?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is going to end with missiles, and there is no doubt that the American people will be able to say, hey, he gave him a chance. He gave him a chance. He was a fair guy. God bless you, Sandy. I love your show.
Thank you, Victor. I appreciate the call very much. And Victor makes some very good points. I mean, is the Iranian spokesman right when he says the ceasefire is just a ploy? Is that actually what's going on? I mean, why else would you let the Iranians play out the scene in a open-ended ceasefire? And one that's now extended indefinitely, because that's what the president announced yesterday. I think it's clear that President Trump has shown that he would prefer a negotiated end to this conflict, a negotiated capitulation that allows for the United States to seize the highly enriched uranium without having to have armed forces surrounding that particular group, without putting American boots on the ground. And he would, and this is a way of also making sure Iran stops threatening traffic through the strait. A negotiated attempt to do this is always going to be better than using military force. But, is it reasonable? Is it rational when these people can't be trusted? I think Victor makes another really good point that might be a play here, and that is perhaps it is that President Trump needs to be seen as willing to negotiate, and so that's why he's putting in the extra ceasefire thing. He has to be seen, and Victor made this point very well, to have left no stone unturned to end this conflict with the loss of as few human lives as possible. And that would be for both humanitarian reasons and for political purposes. Both in the Middle East and here at home with a midterm coming up. So he needs to be seen to have given it every effort to not bomb again, I think, for both the Gulf neighbors and the people the civilians that are there, and for the people who want peace above all else here back in the United States. Now, here's the thing, though. He's having to negotiate with the IRGC, and the IRGC is just completely crazy. And the Gulf states attacked by Iran may not put a large store in talks with the IRGC. And if Iran refuses to negotiate, it makes escalation, I guess, an easier sell. Especially when you have Iran keep firing at commercial traffic in the Strait, which is international waters. I think if Donald Trump gives the appearance of wanting to negotiate, ends up sending J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio or Witkoff and Kushner back over to Islamabad, regardless of whether Tehran shows up or not, then it shows that he's a serious man trying to do new serious negotiation and has literally left nothing on the field, has tried every effort. So when Iran refuses to negotiate in good faith, then he is within a rational, reasonable space to bomb. Is that what this is about? Is this all about setting up a bombing so that there was no choice, that they did everything, but even if it meant making some people a little bit upset because he was continuing to extend ceasefires to people who violate them over and over again? Is that actually what's happening here? There is a glimmer of hope about a negotiation, and it's Iran's move. If they, return to the negotiating table while the blockade is in place, and the U.S. Navy is, keeping that blockade in place. In fact, they just seized another tanker linked to Iran's black market oil sales. And the U.S. forces conducted a right of visit maritime interdiction, meaning they boarded a boat called the Tiffany without incident. And the Tiffany was in the Indian Ocean between Sri Lanka and Indonesia. And I think that happened overnight. And if we continue to keep the blockade going and they still come to the table, then maybe that's a step forward. But so far, they haven't come to the table. And we are boarding boats. In fact, the president talked about this during his CNBC interview yesterday. There's something happened that was interesting during the boarding of one of these boats. Cut 31D, please, Mike.
They're trying to move the missiles because we've obliterated most of their missiles, and they're trying to move their missiles around, even during the ceasefire, which I think was a good thing because we're totally loaded up. We have so much ammo. We have so much of everything that we've, much more powerful than it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. So we've used this to restock, and they probably have done a little bit of restocking. We caught a ship yesterday that had some things on it which wasn't very nice, a gift from China perhaps, I don't know. But I was a little surprised, because I have a very good relationship, and I thought I had an understanding with President Xi, but that's all right. That's the way war goes, right?
A gift from China? Huh. And finding that on that boat, finding something for China or from China on that boat, actually exposed a China link to that Iran-bound ship that we didn't know existed before. And this is for, a probe of suspected dual-use cargo aboard the Tuska, which is still in U.S. custody after American forces inspected what maritime security sources told the press is likely dual-use cargo, which is material that can serve both civilian and military purposes following a voyage from Asia. The shipping data shows the Tuska made multiple recent stops in major ports in southern China before transiting through Southeast Asia and heading for Iran. And part of a pathway, it's part of a pathway that analysts are saying has helped Iran sustain trade flows despite U.S. pressure. And the seizure comes as part of the, of the efforts to enforce the naval blockade. Those analysts say attempting to transit amid an active U.S. naval blockade suggests that the cargo may have been of a high priority. It tried to run the blockade, which seems kind of, a stupid thing to do when there's a blockade, which indicates that there was something aboard that ship that they really, really needed in Iran. Now, China criticized the interception. Their foreign ministry spokesman said that the Strait of Hormuz is a sensitive and complex issue, signaling some diplomatic friction there. U.S. forces intercepted the vessel after it refused to stop repeatedly. They gave it repeated warnings. I think they talked to it for like 6 hours, telling it that it was violating the blockade before the Spruance, which is a guided missile destroyer, ordered the crew to evacuate the engine room and then fired rounds into that section of the ship, which disabled its ability to move. And then the Marines boarded and took control without any resistance. So, this is the job of the blockade. It targets vessels entering or leaving Iranian ports, and its purpose is to cut off maritime trade while avoiding direct strikes on, Indian or Iranian territory. So it's kind of a, it's a soft way of having a, I wouldn't say soft way of having a military. It's a non-direct bombing way of keeping a military stranglehold on the economic life of Iran. And Iran is really doing its best to reopen the straits. They don't agree to any of this, and they've been able to do it to a certain extent because of the IRGC Navy. Now, a lot has been made of the fact that our forces claim that the Iranian naval forces are gone, and that's correct. There are two forms of navy in Iran. You have Iran's conventional navy, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy. That's the IRIN. And that is the navy that has sustained big time losses and is basically now combat ineffective. But there is a second tertiary navy over there, or that would be third, but there's a secondary navy group over there, and that's controlled by the IRGC. And it's a separate organization with different equipment, different command structure, and they have about 155. I'm not sure how many they have. They did have at the beginning 155. I don't know how many they have now. But the strait closure was basically accomplished by the IRGC fast attack craft using direct fire against tankers. They don't need, missiles or drones for that. And this has been their most effective strategic tool to impact global shipping and in regard to transiting the strait. The Wall Street Journal says that 60% of the IRGC fast attack boats are intact, and that these smaller vessels, they're like PT boats, are significantly harder to detect using satellite surveillance than a conventional warship would be. And the IRGC Navy is the most prominent user of the small attack boats. And they use swarm tactics, combining, speed, coordinated maneuver, low radar signature, because they have these fiber-hulled small boats that are at sea level, which return a radar picture that looks like the ocean, as opposed to a ship, which you can, pick out. And then you have them out there in the middle of legitimate small craft operating. And so they work fast and they work in groups, and that's how they've been able to worry boats in the strait. And that's how they've been able to cause enough consternation that we needed to cause a naval blockade. and go in and stop it. So that's why the Strait blockade is there. It's not an aggression against Iran. What it is part of an economic stranglehold. And that's what we currently have going on in Iran. But the president has said that he's happy to negotiate with these people now, even though they're still using these little IRGC mosquito boats to worry the ships going through. This is Sandy Shack, by the way, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner on the Kuhner Report. It's time for Truth or Troll. Mike picks or a sound cut or story from the past week and asks the question, are these serious? Go ahead, Mike.
And now, America's favorite game show, where you get to decide on the Kuhner Report. This is Truth or Troll.
Today's entry for Truth or Troll comes from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who went on Fox the other day and ripped the mainstream media for peddling lies about the Iran war in support of the Iranian regime.
If the American people want the truth, they definitely should not pick up the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or watch CNN, especially these days in the midst of this incredibly successful military operation against Iran. It's almost like these legacy American media outlets were rooting for the Iranian regime over the American people, over our great United States military, because they are so rooted in their opposition to President Trump rather than seeking and reporting on the facts.
So there it is. Caroline Leavitt says the mainstream media, people like CNN and the New York Times, are rooting for Iran. Do you think she's telling the truth here, or is she just trolling?
I think it's trolling, even though, to be honest with you, even though it does appear to be like that, I can't imagine, and maybe it's just I'm naive, but I cannot imagine that a major news outlet that's American-based, or any American, I don't care what unless they're, got stock in Iranian power and light, I cannot imagine, and they're a cold-hearted bastard, I cannot imagine that any American, even the New York Times or CNN, would be rooting for Iran. But that's me.
Yeah, it is interesting. I kind of feel like she's telling the truth, because it seems like she always says things more or less with her heart. You know what I mean? Like, she just kind of says things the way she is, or just how she's sees
sincere.
It. Yeah. I think she actually believes what she was saying. I think she was telling the truth.
Yeah, I think so too. Although you don't have to agree with us if you're listening. If you don't think Mike and I are right, you can certainly take our poll, which is at wrko.com/Kuhner. You'll see the little troll on the lower left-hand side, and you can go there. Or you can also go to X and at the Kuhner Report and take the poll. What do you think? Is Caroline Leavitt being truthful, or is she just trolling the mainstream media, in particular CNN and the New York Times? You can let us know how you weigh in. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. So we get back to President Trump's who has extended the ceasefire again. And my question, is he being played? Iran says as long as the blockade is in effect, there is no ceasefire, and they will attack. They don't have they don't seem to have any ability to say, sure, let's go to the let's go to the table and work this out. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no long-range missiles or medium-range missiles, or I don't believe they even have short-range missiles anymore. They've been destroyed. But the IRGC has, what is a modern version of PT boats. And those are worrying U.S. Navy ships and those ships that the U.S. lets through the strait. They are using those to hassle ships and to fire upon them. They say they won't negotiate. Trump says there'll be a ceasefire until they negotiate. What kind of standoff is that? Is the president being played here, basically? Let's go to Rob in Maine. Rob, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Fine, Sandy. Thanks for the good job you and Mike and everybody there are doing. We appreciate it. I wanted to just bring up one idea. Those power plants everywhere in the world, whether they're nuclear or gas or coal-fired, it's one big power plant, but then they have a lot of little off stations. And the off stations are not manned by people typically. They're all automatic. So what President Trump could do to give the mullahs something to think about while he's got his plans in operation right now is to use our information and the Israeli information for where those little off stations are located and which populations they serve. You hit them one after another without taking any bridges out, without taking any power plants out, but the number starts to increase. And while the number's increasing, you have areas where people will be good targets for our Air America folks to come in and supply them with information and help to go against the regime. This way there's no people killed, and there's no bridges which are taken out or anything. It's just one more idea that our very smart president could possibly use to help forward his will to negotiate with these people. Thanks a lot, Sandy.
Well, Rob, I just want to say before you go, I think that's a great idea. I think that's an absolutely wonderful idea. And I think that, something that you can do to hassle the power grid in Iran without hurting people, I think is a brilliant idea. I think the only issue with that would be how easy is it to rebuild those? Because the whole point behind the roads and bridges and main power plants is it takes a long time to replace them. So you know that they are vulnerable and helpless during that period of time. But I think if you can send in drone strikes and not risk American lives to take out something, even if it's quickly rebuilt, meaning quickly within a few months as opposed to years, you can still do a lot of damage and control the situation. So I think, Rob, that's great. Bravo to you.
Sandy, and yes, the other thing it does is it allows places that are well known where people will be, it's possible to have some help to go against the government by Air America type supplying the people against the government. It's just one more idea, but I think...
Well, I think it's a great idea, Rob, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the call. Is Iran playing President Trump, who has extended the ceasefire after basically going back and forth saying, no, I will not, and now he is? What does he think has changed? Iran has never negotiated in good faith, and as far as I can tell, has not ever actually abided by the ceasefire that ended today, or was supposed to end today, but has now been open-endedly extended. What do you think is going on here, and is President Trump being taken advantage of, if such a thing were possible? I never thought so before, but is that what's happening now? Let's go to Bill in Sudbury. Bill, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Well, good morning. Good morning, Sandy. I think we got to stop dancing around in the end zone and start analyzing the defense.
Okay.
Because I don't think analyzing the defense is joining the other team. I think that's only smart.
I don't know what you mean by that, Bill. You need to be more specific with me.
All right. You were just saying that if you question this, then you're with them. Then if you question anything, then you're with them. I think that's really lazy.
What did I say? If you question something, you're with them. When did I say that?
That's what the president is saying now. Not you. I meant it the royal you. But the thing is we don't know anything about Iran.
When did the president? I'm just really. I want to get this straight because I want to have a reasonable conversation with you. So I don't. When did the president say, "If you question this, you're with them"? When did he say that?
Yesterday, he said the evil media is making it harder for me because they're asking me these hard questions. The other day in the briefing room, the secretary announced that they shot down 450 drones, and the reporter correctly said 450 out of how many? And the secretary said that's a trick question. It's not a trick question. Is it 450 out of 500 or is it 450 out of 10,000? Because it makes a big difference. The thing is we don't know anything about Iran. Okay, how many of the 7 countries that border Iran can you name? What's the second largest city in Iran? What's the third?
And I care about these. Why? I'm sorry. Why is this important?
Because if we're talking about a blockade, the 7 countries that border Iran might.
But we're not blocking those other countries. We're just blocking Iran. Not ships can still go in the strait to other countries, Bill. They're being stopped if they're going to the port of any of the ports in Iran. That's where they're being stopped. Other ships are being allowed through.
Just general knowledge. How many of the 7 countries?
Well, no, Bill. You didn't respond to what I just said. And, this is I'm treating you with respect. Treat me with respect back. So let's have a conversation as opposed to just throwing things at me. I said, you said you're blocking these other places, but you're not. The ships are going through to other places. The blockade is stopping ships that are not allowed to go through. And then Iran, by the way, if they don't like the ships are coming through, then they're using those attack boats, those mosquito attack boats, to go after ships that they shouldn't be going. Like they attacked in India, a ship going to India the other day, which was kind of weird because India's on their approved list, but they still attacked it because you have these different factions fighting over who gets to shoot at what. But we let boats through that have nothing to do with Iran.
Yes, the 10 boats that made it through the other day, and they went to Pakistan to a terminal controlled by the Chinese. The Chinese buy 90% of the oil.
Bill, that just first you tell me no ships are going through. Now you say yes, some ships went through. So I don't understand what your point is here. There are ships getting through. First you say they're not. Now you say they are. Okay, let's agree that some ships get through. So what is your point here?
Point is, we don't know anything about Iran, and we are spending way too much time dancing around in the end zone. All right?
What do you mean we don't know anything about Iran? We know a lot about Iran. So I don't know. I mean, we know, for instance, that they were developing nuclear warheads. We know that they had enriched uranium at Fornow. We know that they can't be trusted. We know that they have broken ceasefire after ceasefire. We know that even now they're saying we don't want to talk to you, and so we think that we think we've won. I mean, we know a lot of stuff about Iran. We know that we haven't seen Khomeini since the conflict started because he was injured and nobody will let us see him. We know that the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is the elite branch of the Iranian armed forces, has blocked their president, Masoud, I'm very bad at these pronunciations, so I apologize to anybody, Masoud Pezeshkian's presidential appointments, and erected what sources describe as a security cordon around Khomeini so the two can't talk. We know this has happened. And we know that the IRGC has assumed control over key state functions. And this is a military branch of the Iranian government. It's not a coup, because a coup is something that happens in a short time. This has been happening for years. They've been expanding their power. So we actually know a lot of things about Iran, Bill. And just because the guy in the street doesn't know what the second largest city in Tehran does, doesn't mean they don't understand the rest of these things. Don't you think? I mean, seriously. I mean, what is it that you want people to understand that they're not understanding?
It's a huge country. It's not just Tehran. Okay, it's
everybody knows it. Bill,
people.
Okay, so what is your point? I keep asking over and over again, and I'm sorry that my voice rises, but it's just like I'm starting to understand frustration that Jeff talks about, and I get on him, I think, for being not more conversational with you, and I'm beginning to understand his frustration at the moment. Bill, what is your point with all of this? We know that Iran is a large country. It's a large country that's currently under a radical regime control. All of the country, not just Tehran. No, people use Tehran as a euphemism for Iran because it's the head. It's where the head of the government is. The same way that people use the term Washington when they refer to the United States. Well, Washington says this. They don't mean just Washington, and nobody means just Tehran. So what is your point with me?
I feel like we're not getting good information. I feel like there's too much celebrating and not enough clear-eyed analyzing of what's actually happening.
Well,
that's
don't you
point.
think? Okay, thank you for stating that. I appreciate that. That's exactly what I've been looking for, Bill. So I appreciate that very much. Now, don't you think it's possible that when you say there's too much celebrating, I'm assuming you're talking about President Trump. Am I correct?
I felt like when he announced the ceasefire and everybody celebrates, that's sending them an important message on where we stand. I think.
And what do you think that message is?
That we're dying to get out of there, and they have their plan. Their plan to hang on looks good when we're all dancing around celebrating the ceasefire. Their plan looks better.
Okay, so you think that when President Trump announces a ceasefire, that it sends the wrong message to Iran that we just don't have the ability or the mindset or the moral fortitude to stay in there until our final goals are met. Is that what you're saying?
I meant the celebration following the announcement.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's what I'm talking about. So, all right.
I think that sends a strong message.
So what message would you prefer that we send?
I don't think we are well served by the president running to social media 150 times a day.
Well, Bill, that doesn't answer my question. What message is it that you think we should send?
That we're determined and we're going to do this.
Okay, so
I think the on again, off again is really, really bad.
Yeah, I don't disagree that I find it disconcerting as well. But here's what I'm trying to figure out, because unlike you, I actually do have faith in the Trump administration, and I think President Trump generally knows what he's doing. I think if he's doing a ceasefire, my concern was that he was too worried about saving. Again, this sounds so bad. I don't mean he's too worried about saving lives, but I think he's too worried about the humanitarian criticism that people like the Pope were giving him, and people like the liberal left, to be honest with you, Bill, were giving him, that he wasn't caring enough about the Iranian people, so he's going the extra mile with another ceasefire. And I viewed the ceasefire itself as playing into Iranian hands. You view the celebration of the ceasefire as playing into Iranian hands. What I am thinking at this point, and maybe you disagree, maybe you don't, is that maybe the Iranian spokesperson is right to a certain extent. Maybe President Trump is knowing full well that they are not trustworthy and that they will not, in good faith, negotiate, is still giving them an opportunity to do so, because that's the kind of guy that he is. He is, in fact, I know you disagree, but he is, in fact, thoughtful. He is, in fact, going to give peace a chance right to the very last minute. And when they don't end up coming to the negotiating table, after he has given them every opportunity, he's going to bomb them, because that is what he said he would do. And he may have delayed it, but I believe that's probably what he's going to do, because he will have given them every single chance to negotiate in good faith. And so I think they know this, Bill, and I guess you disagree. If you want to tell me how you feel on the other side, you can hang on through the break, because we're up against a hard break, and I don't want to cut you off. I want you to be able to respond to what I've said. The Iranian ceasefire, an open-ended extension, which made me ask the question, what's going on here? Is the president being taken advantage of, or is he serious? Does he think he can negotiate with these people? And there was celebration in some quarters regarding the ceasefire. And our caller, Bill from Sudbury, who was on before the break, says that the celebration was a signal to the Iranians that the U.S. is not serious about holding them accountable, and so why should they? I say it doesn't matter that perhaps he extended the ceasefire to make sure no one could criticize him for not making every effort to give negotiated peace a chance. That he does intend probably to bomb them when they refuse to go back to the table. Bill, is that a fair assessment, or have I misstated anything?
That is a fair assessment. The only part that I would add is I wish that you would stop calling them crazy, because the Iranians, they are actually executing their plan. Us smashing everything, that's part of their plan. Okay? They're not surprised by that. Unfortunately, we were surprised when they hung on. And then we were surprised when they grabbed the Strait of Hormuz. and then we were surprised again and again and again. It seems like
Bill,
we keep
what makes
being
you think we were
surprised.
surprised when they? Okay. We were not surprised when they took the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the media tried to make it like, oh my gosh, didn't we know they would do that? Of course we knew they would do that. They knew that from the very beginning that would be the first step that they would take. And we were hoping to crush them before it became an issue. And when it didn't, President Trump then put the blockade in. But of course, there was no surprise. You may have been surprised, and the guy in the corner may have been surprised, but the administration, along with the Pentagon, was not surprised. So, I mean, they knew it was coming. Just because you may not have known doesn't mean that they were surprised. So let's just get that one out of the way. The things that Iran did to respond were foreseeable, and they were foreseeable and were foreseen by the administration. What they chose to do, just because they didn't bomb the Strait of Hormuz, they didn't do this or that. They have, levels of priority targets. They know what's going to happen in response, and they respond in kind when they think it's appropriate. Okay, so let's just put that out of the way. The military, regardless of the fact that Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of War, is not a bunch of cartoon characters. They do understand what happens when they go in and do something, Bill. So let's just move on from that one, okay?
Hey, Raw. So we're talking about power stations and bridges, right? That was what we started talking about. That's what we were talking about yesterday. So how many? How many power stations and bridges are there in this country? Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? Do we even know?
Yes, we know,
Listen,
Bill. Bill, we have satellites. Do you think we don't know what a bridge looks like, or what a power plant looks like, or what a major road looks like? Of course we know. Well, you may not know, but that doesn't mean that the United States government doesn't know.
So what do you think it is? You think power stations, you think it's closer to 50 or 1,000?
I have no idea, Bill, but I know that there are. But I'm not the one drawing up the B-52 bombing route, I mean, I don't know how many there are, but I know that in a country of a lot less people than the United States has, that they don't have thousands of power plants. We know which ones they are. We can see them from space. We know exactly where they are, and we know how to take them out without damaging too much country around them. We didn't before because we were hoping to leave them intact so that the Iranian people, the Persians who have been living under this yoke for so long, could rebuild. That's why we wanted to do it. But in order to allow them to rebuild and leave that important infrastructure, there has to be a government in place that wants to rebuild without becoming antagonistic again to, quote, the great Satan. That's why, in fact, we haven't done it before. But if we can't come to some kind of agreement that says no nukes and stop funding terrorism, then that's not going to happen, and we're going to let them take 50 years to rebuild instead of 10. That's essentially why. But Bill, this is bizarre. Do you know how many? Yes, the government knows how many power plants are there. The government knows how many bridges are there. This is not, this is not the Great Wall of China in the 1700s where nobody knows what's behind the wall. We know what's in the country of Iran. So I don't understand why you still harp on that or think that we don't.
If you don't trust the media and you don't trust I'll give you 4 really good books on the potential American-Iranian war. The Iranian Ways of War. It's a great book.
Yeah, and if it's out there in public, Bill, that means, Bill, if it's out there in public, that means that, people in the U.S. government have read it too. This is not a vacuum. You don't have the key to the secrets of the Iranian mind. There are Iranians working with the U.S. government who know what the cultural imperatives are. These are not secrets to our State Department or our Pentagon. You seem to think that they are. The secret to me is how President Trump's mind works. I don't know. And I find it really interesting because I do trust the man to put the benefits of the American people in front of everything else. And that includes, and that means, essentially that whatever he's doing, while it may not be apparent to me, is ultimately designed to help all of us. And so I'm trying to figure that out, to be honest with you. And I'm asking the question, is he was just too overly concerned with people, the Pope's the Pope's criticisms of last week? Is he responding to that? Is he trying to appear more of a pacifist because he thinks that's going to help the midterms? Or is this just down and dirty, and is he just giving peace a one last chance so his critics can shut up before he bombs the hell out of Iran? That's basically the questions I'm asking. I've given you a lot of time, Bill, and I appreciate you calling in, but I think we need to move on because you just keep kind of repeating the same stuff over and over again, like, do we know what's in Iran? Yes, we know what's in Iran. I can honestly tell you, we do know what's in Iran. I can state that categorically, not the least of which is the fact that, the press publishes satellite photos of Iran all the time. I've seen the bridges. I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure the Pentagon does. So I appreciate the call very much. So if you think I'm if I'm giving President Trump too much credit, or if I'm giving President Trump not enough credit, you can let me know. You can tell me. I looked at the poll because the poll question today, which you can take at on X at the Kuhner Report or WRKO.com/Kuhner, is: do you think President Trump is being played by the Iranians since he has extended the ceasefire yet again? And, this is just amazing to me because more people, the results are the same as they were an hour or so ago, even though many, many more people have voted in it. And the results are 50-50. 50% think that President Trump is being played, and 50% think he is not, that this is part of an ultimate plan. So I'm wondering what you think. If President Trump really believes that this ceasefire will work and that there can be a negotiated peace, I really would like to know who he thinks he can negotiate with, because I don't see anybody. I don't know about you, but I talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, but the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the elite branch of the Iranian armed forces, seems to have taken control over what's going. But the actual titular head of the Iranian government is President Masoud Pezeshkian, and he's and he's the guy that's supposed to be, calling the shots. And the problem that we have is that his appointments and sources are not being carried through. And in fact, there is now a security cordon around the Supreme Leader, Khomeini. And so the IRGC has effectively taken control of the government. And Iranian experts here say it was always a matter of when, not if, the IRGC was going to step forward, because it's been doing that slowly over the last few decades. And what's happened to the Iranian president is that he's reached a complete political deadlock. And there are these horrible tensions between his administration and the military leadership. And the problem that is going to come from this for us and for anybody dealing with them is that a more powerful IRGC means a more confrontational Iran that is less willing to compromise in negotiations with Washington, more inclined to continue military escalation, not just with us, but across the region. So I don't know whether Tehran is even going to send negotiators to Islamabad to talk with the U.S., but the rise of the Revolutionary Guard really raises doubts about who is actually making the decisions in Iran and whether any civilian official can still speak for the regime. And as I mentioned before, this is not a coup in the traditional sense of a coup, because this has been a slow rolling process, or maybe you could call it a coup, but a slow coup over the past 30 years. And you have this group that has chosen conflict over cooperation, and its security forces have become more and more emboldened. And you see this because recently the president of Iran tried to appoint a new intelligence minister, and that collapsed. That stopped because the IRGC commander, Ahmad Vahidi, said, stop, don't do it anymore. He stopped it. And he didn't like any of the candidates, including the former defense minister. He was rejected too. And Vahidi is insisting that these are wartime conditions And during wartime conditions, all critical, sensitive offices have to be chosen and managed by the Revolutionary Guard, not by the civilian force. And Vahidi is a radical. And so you see with his rise a warning that it's the military that is now calling the shots. I mean, normally, under the Iranian system, the Iranian president would nominate an intelligence minister after securing approval from Khomeini, the supreme leader. But nobody can reach Khomeini now. And the IRGC appears to be acting increasingly without that civilian oversight. And so a military council made up of senior IRGC officers now controls access to the center of power. And it's preventing civilian government from reaching Khomeini and is isolating him from the elected government. So it's a power struggle, and it reflects a long-term trend in Iran where the IRGC has steadily expanded its influence over politics, the economy, national security. And so it really leads into question who is going to be the negotiator? Who is Washington going to negotiate with? Because it doesn't look like it's the people they were negotiating with before. It now looks like it's with the military. And the military doesn't want to negotiate. So is this, is it extending the ceasefire a Don Quixote moment? Is it tilting at windmills? Is there any hope to it? Does President Trump really think that something can come from it? Or is he just doing it to give the peace at all costs people a nod saying, look, I've tried everything. Can we all agree that I've tried everything? And then he's going to bomb them. Which do you think is happening here? I guess that's my question for you. Let's go to Mark in Lowell. Mark, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Great, Andy. How about you?
I'm doing fine. What do you think is the game plan here for President Trump?
I think it's quite simple. I think he's trying to show the world the Black Knightness of this group of people, of these leaders, not the people. The problem is Tehran full of those people, or is it all Shiite? I don't know. But what should really happen is they should take the bargaining chip away from them. As far as I'm concerned, Trump wants a ceasefire, but has the other side done a ceasefire yet, or have they already broken it?
Oh,
because anytime there's a shot, there's a broken peace treaty,
Yeah, these IRGC, their equivalent of a PT boat that we used to use during, the World War II and so forth in Vietnam. The PT boats, they have modern versions of those, and that's what makes up the IRGC Navy, and that's not a Navy that was blown to hell. Like the Iranian Navy was by the U.S. So in this case, we have these little mosquito boats that are firing on ships that go into the Strait. Even those ships that were given safe passage, not just by us but by Iran, have been fired on. There was an Indian boat the other day. I played the natural sound of. Actually, I'll play it again. This is a distress call from an Iranian boat that was going through the strait with their permission. Cut number 50, please, Mike.
Navy, motor tanker Sanmar Herald, Sepa Navy, you get me clearance to go. Sepa Navy, this is motor tanker Sanmar Herald, you get me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You gave me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
Yeah, so Mark, that's a boat that had not only clearance it was an Indian boat. Not only did it have clearance from the U.S. Navy, it had clearance from the Iranians to go through. And you hear him, you gave me clearance to go. You're firing now. And then finally he's like, let me turn back. I mean, because, I'm second on your list and you're still letting me. So the problem that they have is, yes, they break the ceasefire every chance they get. They even fire on boats that they give clearance to go through. And that's because nobody knows who's in power. Because you have the civilian authority who wants to negotiate, and you have the military power who doesn't want to negotiate, and the military people are the ones that have the little Navy boats. So that's what they have right now, Mark.
Is that we take that off the playing board. We take the straight back, and the way we take it back is the way we take care of. Everyone will find out real quick that if you have a boat on the ocean, on the strait, and you're not supposed to be there, you're shot out of the water. Just like what we've done on our coastlines. And just do it and be done with this. And if we happen to hit a fishing boat one time, so be it. But I promise you there won't be any more fishing boats out there after that one time.
Well, I think that's kind of what we're doing now with Iranian boats, but there are others who use the Strait of Hormuz, and so you can't. And Bill from Sudbury actually raised this point, and I hate to give Bill from Sudbury any credit that I don't have to, but there are other countries that use the strait. It is international waters. It doesn't belong to Iran, so you can't stop everything because there are free, independent, and U.S. allies using those straits as well. So they need to be able to get through because the strait is really important to Europe and to a lot of Asia. So you can't just, it's like saying nobody can use the Panama Canal or no shipping can come anywhere near the eastern seaboard of the United States. You can't really do that. But what you can do is what the U.S. Navy has done, which is stop anybody who's going to Iran. And they did the humanitarian version of what you were talking about, blowing a ship out of the water. They shot they warned the ship after 6 hours it wouldn't stop, which is giving it every opportunity. And so they said, all right, get everybody out of your engine room. And they were able to, our military is able to actually pinpoint very carefully where the engine room is and where they're going to shoot. And they shot a little missile or a little torpedo, whatever you want to call it, into the engine room and killed their ability to move. And then they boarded the ship. So nobody was killed on the boat. No people were killed, but we got the boat and discovered that China was sending stuff to Iranian when we got the boat. There was dual usage cargo in there. And so we have done that, Mark, I think. But I guess the question is, that I want to ask is, do you think that President Trump really believes that Tehran is that the Iranians, and particularly now if they're controlled by the IRGC, that they're going to negotiate? I mean, even negotiate in bad faith, that they're going to even come to the table? Or is he just making a good faith showing so that he can blow them up? What do you think?
I think he's doing a good faith showing because, like you said, the analogy you used, which was the Black Knight from Monty Hall.
Monty Python,
Python, excuse me.
That's okay.
Is exactly that. And the only way you can show this idiocy is by letting them say they're winners when they lost their army, they lost their navy, they lost their air force, and they lost their defense minimum.
Yeah.
And not even worry about hitting. I don't think we should hit their power stations or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I think the only thing we need to do is just isolate Tehran and blow up all the bridges around Tehran and besiege the place with Air Force and not put any troops down. And then on the Hamas on the Strait, just do mosquito boats are not the same thing as that Indian freak boat.
Yeah.
That was a big boat.
Yeah.
I'm saying any mosquito boat.
But it's also a big boat with no
water,
guns, and the little boats have guns and and torpedoes, but the big boats don't. The Indian freighter doesn't have anything like that, so.
Right, and the little boats all get destroyed.
Yeah.
And keep destroying and destroying. Throw flyers along the coastline of Iran's side and tell them that, guess what? When this ceasefire desists, we're going to do scorch earth on that side. And the only thing that's going to be available is people have to come out in the open to do their shooting, not hide behind walls or do it from a basement window or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's my thought of this. I know it sounds crazy. I'm a veteran, and I don't like loss of life. But when you have idiots who are following idiots, you can't do anything about them. Just like we couldn't do anything we wanted to do with all the Biden idiots.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that I know you don't like loss of life. I don't either, and so I think the plan about blowing up the power plants is more humane because it takes away their ability to manufacture anything or to do anything really. Because if there's no power, you're putting them back into the candlelight era or torch era. So I think that that's probably more effective than bombing a city full of people or hurting a city full of people, because there are millions of people in Tehran. It's the biggest city, and it would be the equivalent of bombing Boston or bombing Washington D.C. So I would say it's I hear the frustration in your voice, and I feel it too. Mark from Lowell, our last call, was referencing my reference to the Black Knight. I was calling Iran the Black Knight because no matter what injuries they suffer, no matter what they do, they keep saying they're winning when we've destroyed everything. And I just I played this on Monday, but just to remind people what the Black Knight was, it's from Monty Python's Holy Grail, and it's John Cleese is the Black Knight guarding a bridge, and Graham Chapman, I believe, is King Arthur, and he wants to go by, and the Black Knight won't let him by. So King Arthur, goes after him with a sword and basically cuts off his arms and legs, and the Black Knight's still saying, "Thou shalt not pass." And it's just reminded me a great deal of Iran, who today says, we're the winners. Winners don't get dictated to by the losers. What the hell? Just to remind you, this is Monty Python's Holy Grail and the Black Knight. Cut 103, Mike.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've heard worse.
You liar.
Come on, you pansy.
You're indeed brave tonight, but the fight is mine.
Oh, had enough, eh?
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left.
Yes, I have.
Look!
Just a flesh wound.
What are you going to do, bleed on me?
I'm invincible!
You're a loony.
The Black Knight always triumphs!
Come, Patsy.
Oh, I see. Running away, eh? You yellow bastard! Come back here and take what's coming to you!
Does that remind you of Iran? Because honest to God, it's the first thing I thought of. And that's what I'm seeing. But now, this is what President Trump is trying to negotiate with, is the Black Knight. Is Iran just, no army, no navy, no missiles, and, Khomeini, for all I know, is on life support. IRGC has taken over. They got mosquito boats in the Strait of Hormuz, but they say they've won the war. And President Trump yesterday gave an open-ended extension to the Iranian ceasefire. And I asked the question, as it made it our poll question today, essentially, is President Trump being rolled by the Iranians here by extending the ceasefire? Or is he just trying to make sure that he cannot be accused of not giving them every single chance to negotiate before the bombing begins? So that's, I think the interesting thing about the ceasefire. Which do you think it is? The poll so far for the past couple of hours was exactly 50-50, no matter how many people voted. It was 50-50. And just in the last maybe half an hour, it has started to change. Now, 52% now say no, he's not being played. So which side are you on here? Richard in New Hampshire, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Richard?
Andy, how are you?
I am fine, sir. So which side do you fall on the question?
I don't think he's being played. The president, I guess there are a couple things that the Iranians are aware of, and what the president's aware of, and what the opposition, this country, is aware of. All right, there is a timeline. All right, the president, if he doesn't wrap this up, if he doesn't, affect an outcome that results in lower gas prices, the Republicans will probably be wiped out in the midterms. Okay, the Iranians know that. Right, they're able to do analysis, and the Russians and their allies, the Chinese, are going to tell them the same thing. So if they persist and this drags on, they're not wrong in thinking that they can inflict an unacceptable political loss on the president and by extension the United States. Now, the president then, in blockading the Straits of Hormuz, all right, there's a calculus there too. The Iranians aren't shipping any oil, okay? That the Karg Island is their oil terminal where they offload stuff from their oil fields. Nothing or a very small amount is moving out of there. And within maybe a week or so, depending what you're offloading or not offloading, right, they're not going to be able to have any more on-site storage for their oil.
Yeah.
Okay. And when that happens, then they have to start shutting down pumping of their oil and gas fields.
Yeah. And that damages the machinery.
Correct. It isn't something that you can turn off and on. Right. So they're all, there's a little brinksmanship on both sides. But I just want to respond to what one of your previous callers said with respect to bombing substations and things like that in terms of power infrastructure. There is an alternative to that. And when NATO was bombing Yugoslavia, when Slobodan Milosevic was in power, they had used a type of an ordnance that basically blows up in the air, and you have an aerial spool of, let's say, carbon fiber spooling, and it falls across the electrical transmission lines coming out of, let's say, some of these power plants, and in essence shorts it out. Okay?
So you're taking out the wires, the conduits, as opposed to the plant itself.
Well, you short everything out. All
okay.
Right? So then, and rather than blowing it up, and then the
Oh, Richard, hang on for me, would you please? Because we're up against a hard break. So, the most cost-effective way to hurt the Iranian infrastructure, to bring down or to get the desired effect, which is to stop Iran from having power, while still maintaining the infrastructure for rebuilding purposes. Is that a fair thing to say, Richard?
I mean, we saw the Pope and other individuals trying to make an argument that if you blow these things up, you're going to incur civilian casualties.
Yeah,
you've had IRGC family members and other supporters, in essence, doing human shield stuff around. These, critical points.
Yeah,
but like that, where you short things out, you avoid the optics of who believe is being blown up.
Yeah.
And then also, it's very labor intensive to get those facilities back online once they short out. It isn't a matter of just turning a switch on or replacing a fuse. All right. And if you do enough of them in the correct way, again, turning a power grid back on is not a matter of just switching, flipping a switch. So, there's that. And we have options, and I hope we're exercising. I did kind of talk to somebody that, that was in Yugoslavia or whatever, and they were like, yeah, that's, we did do that. And you just shut the lights off, when you just drop this stuff. And you can repeat it. So, I mean, if they turn it back on, you just
do it
sort of
again.
drop this stuff like confetti going across the, whatever transmission lines they have.
So do you think that's what President Trump is thinking, Richard, that while he's given the outward sign of still negotiating with people who have shown that they really have no interest in negotiating, but he is still trying no matter what? And do you think this is all because what you're talking about doing, and when he says bombing the bridges and the power plants, he doesn't say how or what he wants to use to bomb them. So he doesn't say, he talks a good game in regard to, obliteration, but I don't know if he means by that using means like you're talking about, or just literally dropping a bunker buster on them. I don't know what he means by that. Nobody knows what he means by that except maybe Pete Hegseth and the Joint Chiefs. But do you think that this is just for show because he knows they're not going to negotiate, so that he can, with a clear conscience, go in and do something like you're suggesting, or even take it further? Do you think he's just buying time? Are the Iranians right when they say that?
Everyone's buying time. It's brinksmanship. They know that the president wants to get out because he doesn't want to be wiped out in the midterms. So, and they're looking at survival, right? The IRGC does not care. There are levels of existence that they're going to be comfortable with, all right? And as long as they can maintain control, using their Basij, which is basically a civilian brown shirt type organizations where they, keep the population in line.
Yeah.
Right. But if they come out of this with the U.S. kind of leaving them, their organization intact, then that's a victory for them because they maintain control over the civilian population.
That's right.
And they live to fight another day. They don't care about the fact that they have over 1,000% inflation over there right now.
Mm-hmm.
They got serious problems over in Iran. Tehran, they're going to have to move the capital because there's no water. All right, the aquifers are all exhausted, and it's unsustainable. So there are certain things that they've done that have made the country horrible, and they're not going to be, how much pain did people take? Who knows?
Some of our callers today say that, that's why we have, there are U.S. patriots like Air America who have basically given up their own citizenship in order to help other people regain their life and their country and go over and aid the Iranian people if they want to be aided, I guess is the question. I'm thinking if there's no water in Tehran, they probably do want to be aided. So I think you're right. It's all about buying time. It is brinkmanship. The only problem is that, there was a self-interest, I think, a level of self-interest in the brinkmanship of the 60s with President Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the alternative at that point in time was a nuclear holocaust. We've taken off the board the immediate threat of a nuclear holocaust. It still exists in the future if we don't make sure that we have all the enriched uranium back, but it also still exists if they don't agree to stop striving for that. And so I think that in this particular case, the brinkmanship is about what you just said: the level of subsistence that they are willing to accept versus power. What the balance is for them, what they want to achieve. I tend to think that the president knows full well that these people aren't going to come back to the table. They're just not. And the IRGC is in control. They have I think that they're happy living in a cave with a torch as long as they can control their population, which is what you alluded to. And I think that's what's going to happen. And I hope to God that they do what you suggested and use the kind of ordinance that would short everything out as opposed to blow everything up, because I think that would be the humane way of dealing with things, and the fewer people would be killed. Because I think you're going to have to bomb. I think you're going to have to do something because these people won't negotiate. Thank you so much for the call, Richard. I appreciate it very much. Let's speak with Ken in Weymouth. Ken, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Ken?
Good, Sandy. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. So do you think President Trump knows that they're not going to negotiate, that and even if they did, they're untrustworthy, that he is just trying to cross all his T's and dot all his I's so he can, in good conscience, bomb? Ken?
Yeah, that's true. He is, but one thing I think he's got to understand is, as we look in the previous wars, I had a nephew that fought in Afghanistan. Islam wants to pull you in to their territory. And when they see all these polls being taken and they see types of division among us, that just empowers them. I think what he's doing is keep the ceasefire, put your foot on their neck where they can't even breathe. Because if you had somebody who was dangerous, you can find them. It's the best thing you can do. We took out the drug boats in Venezuela. So why not just do the same thing with these people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think we're fragmented over here. We don't have the patience that they do. I mean, they call a worldwide caliphate. You know, Turkey did it back at the turn of the century, okay? The Armenian genocide and so on and so forth. World War I came in and wiped them out. But they've been fighting a crusade for 1,500 years. And what my nephew told me was, he goes, look, they know about technology, but they live in a cave like the 7th century. So they are a totally different culture. And they disarm their people, and so anybody, they just work off of fear. And this is what Islam is. Fear, submission, and all of that. But we over here as, quote, Christianity, have fragmented our beliefs. And that's the problem. And hey, I pray for the Holy Father, but he shouldn't be taking his shoes off and giving them any type of accolades. We have to stand up for the truth. And I think the more we do that, and I think the more President Trump goes by that philosophy, you don't, you know, I hate to say it, but I don't know which Rocky movie it was, but when Burgess Meredith, as Mickey said, don't let that bastard breathe, that's what we got to do. Don't let him breathe.
And you think that we can do that by economic means, it sounds like. So you're saying that the president has a mindset toward the midterm elections and maybe healing some of the schism back here, which is giving aid and comfort to Iran, so to speak, that we're better off just with the economic stranglehold between blockading the straits and Steve Bessent's reaching out to countries and nation states and banks that have Iranian assets and taking them, and also striking people who are dealing with the Iranians and making it difficult to deal with them because they are going to incur U.S. sanctions. You think that is the better way to achieve what you're talking about achieving? Is that a fair statement, Ken? Ken? I think we lost Ken. So, but I think what he's saying is that we can achieve that complete surrender that he says we need to do through economic means. And perhaps that is what the president wanted to do. Maybe he's not buying time for bombing. Maybe what he's doing is buying time for the economic annihilation. President Trump has extended the ceasefire with Iran indefinitely until Iran negotiates. But what if they don't? Is this extension just to assuage critics so that he can say he tried every diplomatic remedy available and then, bring in the military? Or is this time to let the economic sanctions destroy what's left of their economy and they unequivocally surrender? Or does he think negotiations can actually work? What do you think is going on here? Let's go to Steve in Andover. Steve, welcome to WRKO. How are you doing, Steve?
Hi there. How are you, Sandy?
I'm fine, thank you, sir. So what do you think is going on here?
So I'm going to take it down a different path. I believe that that the Iranians are playing Trump because every day that the bombing gets pushed aside to another day, they survive. Their survival is based on religion. You can bomb them until the cows come home. They do not care. They believe in surviving, so the religion stays alive. You can kill the Ayatollah, you can kill the president, someone steps up, and the ideology of the religion stays there. If you think about how they came in power in 1978, I believe, 79, it was they came in power through a revolution. And it's going to take a revolution to change the ideology of the people in Iran. And they're just surviving. And Trump is definitely being played, or he just doesn't understand the religious part of this whole idea of the war.
Yeah, I got to think that he understands. I mean, I do, because he's a very smart man and he has very good advisors who understand. The Middle Eastern desk, the Iranian desk at both the Pentagon and the Department of State know their stuff. They understand. It's not people who just took a course at a university. So these are usually people who ancestry involves or who relatives still have in these countries that you have working these desks. So I think understanding is not part of it. So I think if take that out of the equation, Steve, and what are we looking at? Are we looking at somebody who is has such a firm belief in I would say how to put it, firm belief in the goodness of human nature overall, that he thinks there's nobody that can't be brought to the negotiating table, and therefore that's what they're counting on, that he will not recognize somebody he cannot negotiate with?
I believe that the current, I'm not even going to call them a regime. Mm-hmm. It's just, again, I'm going back to the religious part of it. They don't care about the bomb. You have callers call up, and they got all these scenarios about knocking out their power, and they're kind of relating it to the American sitting at home who loses their power in a thunderstorm, and in 12 hours everybody's upset because it's not back on. In my belief, that's not how they think, and they don't care about the people. They care about the religious part of it, to stay in power and buy time.
Well, Steve, the issue that I have with that is that I think that's a pretty rational, reasonable assessment of the situation. But I think the problem that we have at the moment is that it's the IRGC that's in control of the country and appears to be the people who would be in control of negotiations. They're not Khomeini. They actually have Khomeini isolated. Khomeini is unable to communicate with the civil aspects of the government. It's the IRGC, it's the military that now seem to have control over everything. And I don't believe they're, as religious as Khomeini and the civilian sector would have been. This is literally power-hungry military faction that have been doing their best to grow slowly and sometimes surreptitiously in the past few decades, but have now taken this opportunity to just grab power. And so I think that it's not as religious as you think it is because of the IRGC. They're the ones who are controlling everything, including Khomeini at this point.
And Khomeini is a religious leader.
Yes, but he is currently surrounded by Steve. He's currently surrounded by the IRGC. They have a cordon of guards around him. Nobody's actually seen Khomeini since the start of the conflict when he was injured and his father was killed. Nobody has seen him. Nobody has spoken with him, and he is surrounded by IRGC guards. That's my point. So I'm saying it does not appear to be Khomeini calling any of these shots. It appears to be the IRGC. And so that is why I'm saying I don't think that this is a religious standoff. I think this is a military standoff, is what it looks to be at the moment. Yes, Khomeini is the Grand Supreme Leader, but nobody's actually spoken with him or seen him or can talk to him or see him because he's surrounded by IRGC guards who will not allow anybody to have access to him, including the president of Iran. So, I think that's what it looks like is happening right now. So given that, wouldn't you say that maybe it's not as religious as you think?
Oh, no, I would not say that. Okay. And I'll tell you why I will not say that.
Okay.
Because he, as in the Ayatollah, he's a figurehead. Everything is about the religion. Similar to the Pope. If I can make a comparison, the Pope is a figurehead of the Catholic Church, the Catholic beliefs. The Ayatollah is a similar figurehead, but the people follow Sharia law or whatever, excuse my ignorance.
Yeah, Sharia law.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, they're following, Allah. They're not following. At the end of the day, they're not following the Ayatollah. He could be dead. He can be invisible. The ideology is still there. And you go back to the point of the military. Well, who do they believe? What do they believe? Are they believing in, Allah also? And if they are, then we got a problem. And this is just going to continue and continue.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, but I think if they were, as religious as you believe they are, and you could be absolutely right. I don't know the answer to the question. I would say that then the military would not have a problem with the Ayatollah communicating with the president of Iran, because they would all be on the same page. But they do have a problem with it. They have made sure they have cut off all civilian access to the Ayatollah. And by the way, they've cut off all access to the Ayatollah to the rest of the imams. So it would appear that now, because a lot of the leadership existed, the ones that you're thinking of, where the Ayatollah was the supreme leader and he called the shots, those people a lot of them are dead. And so they've had to cobble together, a new leadership. And it looks like in stitching together what they had left, the Ayatollah and friends may, while being left there, like you said, as a figurehead, they're not really calling the shots anymore. It's the IRGC that's calling the shots. And just as an aside, in regard to your analogy to the Pope, where I think that's accurate in regard to a religious figurehead, the Pope is actually more than just a figurehead. He is, by all accounts, the head of the church, whether you think he's a good pope or a bad pope. But the Pope doesn't send out the Swiss Guard to defend the Vatican. They're just there for parade, rotation. So people follow the Pope. They worship because he's the head of the church, but they don't, attack countries because of it, or at least they don't in this century. So I think there's a little bit of a difference there, but we can agree to disagree, Steve. I don't think it's as religious as it used to be. I think the country is. I'm just saying that I don't think the Ayatollah has the power that he had under the leader that was killed at the beginning of the war. I think this particular Ayatollah is kept in a box. I don't know if he's still alive or not, or whether he's comatose, or whether he's just badly disfigured, or what's going on. But nobody's allowed to talk to him, and that includes other imams, and that includes the civilian head of the government. So that lets me know that he's really a non-starter in this, and he may be kept alive for the people, but because he can't issue any orders or tell them what's right or wrong, it's the Guard that's doing it, and they have a very secular approach to things. And I think we're seeing that in the fact that they are, attacking people. And there are factions of the Guard, too. So we don't even know which faction we should be negotiating with. Thank you for the call, Steve. I appreciate it very much. 617-266-6868 is the number here when a caller drops off. It means a line has opened up for you. So we have, President Trump, at least on the face of it, trying to negotiate. But the Iranians are kind of flipping him the bird, even though he extended the ceasefire indefinitely. You had the parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, threaten to reveal new cards on the battlefield. What the hell does that mean? So this is his statement. He says, Trump, by imposing a siege and violating the ceasefire, the Iranians believe that the naval blockade is a violation of the ceasefire. So Trump, by imposing a siege and violating the ceasefire, seeks to turn this negotiating table in his own imagination into a table of surrender or to justify renewed warmongering. This is a post on X. We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats. And in the past 2 weeks, we have prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield. Okay, so they're threatening us. So these people we just granted another ceasefire to are threatening us. This is the Black Knight screaming from, the blood puddle that he's sitting in, saying, "Thou shalt not pass." And by the way, just so you remember who this guy is, he's the guy that led the Iranian delegation in Islamabad during the April 11th peace talks. And when J.D. Vance went over there for the first round of things. So the Iranians are flipping us the bird, and they're threatening some kind of new cards. I don't know if that means a new weapon. I don't know if that means somebody's coming to help them. I don't know what that means, but it's a threat of new military response, and I think that the president, who is no fool, our president is not a fool. Sees the same things that I see, reads the same, or has read to him the same posts that I see. So does the president really think that he can make a deal with these people who won't even come to his table, who are threatening us with new cards? Or is he trying to appear either conciliatory, for the midterms, or is he trying to appear weak, as some people have suggested? To draw in the Iranians into a sense of well-being before striking. Is that his ultimate goal? What do you think is happening? Mike from Lynn, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Mike?
I'm great, Sandy. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Oh boy.
Okay, take a deep breath.
I thank you for your explanation and your analysis and that explanation of the different choices available. I think in the end, our government definitely knows, I believe, that where everything is, what the options are. He's trying to do the best to win the midterm elections, show his compassion and humanity for the humanitarian, the Persians over there, but also realize, excuse me, to also realize that it's most likely, and I believe myself, it's the IRGC that's in charge, and I think eventually it's going to be we deal with them either military or economically with force.
So do you know which one do you think it's going to be? Do you think are we buying time just for the economic sanctions to take effect, or are we in fact going to bomb or do something along the lines of what our friend up in New Hampshire was talking about, and that is, do something that may not be as like blowing up a power plant, but perhaps doing something that's as effective, which will but still allow us to rebuild over there. Which do you think he's going to go for?
It's going to be one of them.
It's a knotty problem, isn't it? I mean, there's no easy answer to any of this, which is why, it requires, first of all, it's very hard to do any of these things by consensus. These are the kind of situations that require a single decision maker, which is why we leave it to the commander in chief, the president. Our president is no fool. You may not agree with him. You may think he is too conservative. You may think he's many things, but one thing he is not is a fool. He's a smart man, and he responds on a very considered level. So I have to imagine that this is aging him and keeping him up at night, but I also have to imagine he has a plan of action, because that's what he is. He is a man of action. And whether you agree with that plan or not, he has a plan, I think. I don't see it at the moment. I can see what the options are, but I don't know which one he's going to choose. So here's a question for you, Mike. Maybe you can answer this. Do you agree with how the president has handled the war so far? Do you think he's made good decisions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he has out of the choices in his mind, but I believe he will do the best choice for what he ends up doing.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to say which one, but it would almost be a guess.
Well, of course it would be a guess. It's a guess for anybody. But if it were you, which one would you pick?
I'm on the humanitarian side, but I'm also on the timeline side. Can't take much more of it, and I don't think the IRGC is going to they don't care about the humanitarian either.
Mm-mm.
So eventually I think it's going to be the bombing or severe interruption that unfortunately is going to affect the population, the Persian side.
Yeah, it
But
seems to me that President Trump is doing everything he can not to do that, but there's going to come a moment when he's going to have to say, I have no choice. I think that's what he's trying to avoid, and I think that's why he's probably giving time for the economic sanctions to work, hoping that if nothing else, maybe those will. And then the final option is sending in the military, whether by plane or however you want to do it. But I think it's a combination of all of the above. He wants to make a show of giving peace a chance. I think that's important for the world and for the midterms. I think he wants to give the economic sanctions, which Besant has put into place, take effect, because that it's very hard to arouse a national military response and physical response when people are, have no food, no water, can't trade. That's kind of forcing the hand on a revolution. And if still that doesn't work, and if all that comes, then he's just going to drop a bomb. And I think that the Iranians, people have said they think that Trump is playing into the Iranians' hands, Mike, but I think maybe it's the other way around, because if the Iranians don't come to the table, if Iranians keep posturing like the Black Knight, oh, we have a surprise weapon for you, we have new cards, and we're the winners of this fight, and all the rest of this that they have been doing, then they appear more and more unreasonable every day, and by comparison, Trump appears more rational and more focused on peace, and I think it all inures to his benefit, and I think that's what the ultimate game plan is. But, time will tell, don't you think?
Time's going to tell, and it's not going to be much longer that it happens.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure, but I totally agree with the way you explained it, but I don't know how that converts into an answer from me.
Okay.
You answered it for me from your lips to my ears.
I could hear you. I could hear your frustration in that it's just such a huge problem. And that's why it's worth discussing, because it is such a huge problem. So thank you for the call, Mike. I appreciate it very much. Let's talk to Richard in Groveland. Richard, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Sandy. Thank you for subbing for Jeff. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Listen, the thing that bothers me is I've read the Quran, and I don't know how many people in the Trump administration have read the Quran, but there is a verse in there that says that Muslims cannot lie to Muslims, but they can lie to infidels, and everyone who's not a Muslim is an infidel. So why do we think, and why are we surprised that negotiations are kind of up in the air? These people cannot be trusted because their own religion tells them to lie.
Should we be sending in a Muslim, Richard, to negotiate on our behalf?
Well, to tell you the truth, I've never thought of that. I'm not sure that's a bad idea.
Well, I did not know the Quran said that, by the way. That was news to me.
Well, the Quran does say that, and there's a lot of people that don't know that the Quran, if you are negotiating with Muslims, they can lie to you, and their own holy book says so. So,
well, let me ask you a question. That's a very interesting piece of information, Richard, and it could explain a lot in regard to our negotiations. But let me ask you the same question that I asked Mike from Lynn, and that is, do you agree with how President Trump has handled the war so far?
No, I think there's been too many stalls.
Okay. So you think he's been played by the Iranians?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, that's their style.
Yeah, it would appear to be over and over again. But I have to think that President Trump knows that. So being such an artful negotiator, no pun intended, with the title of his book, and being such a brilliant man, I would be surprised if he would fall for something. I want to ask a question of the audience in general that I have asked the past couple callers. Do you agree with how President Trump has handled the war? Has he made rational, reasonable decisions based on sound intel. Keeping in mind that the problem is his adversary is not rational and reasonable, at least from our perspective. Iran looks bat bleep crazy. But has President Trump made good decisions? Let's go to Linda in Lynn. Linda, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks for calling in. So what do you think? Has President Trump made good decisions?
What I'd like to know is why did we go there in the first place? Why did we start this war in the first place?
Well, because Iran, who is run by crazy people, who like to hurt other people, in particular us, the great Satan, had the ability to send nuclear warheads in our direction. They were within 4 to 8 months of it. At the time that President Trump was bringing about Operation Midnight Hammer, which was designed to stop that. But it didn't completely stop it because we discovered they still had enriched uranium, and that's why we went back in again.
Why did he come out a year ago, June, and say that we had completely obliterated?
Because we thought we had. We were under the impression that we had. That's what our intel said at the time, but we were wrong. There was stuff that was in tunnels that the bunker busters did not reach, or in tunnels elsewhere that we were not aware of. Then we got intel that it was there, and that's why we went back again. That's why President Trump made the move again last February to again say we have a problem.
There were people in his own cabinet who did not agree.
Yeah, and then they discovered they were wrong, Linda. They thought that's exactly that we had destroyed their capabilities. We discovered that was wrong, and that they were testing again and testing casings, which meant they had enough for a weapon. And those people thought they were right, obviously, but discovered they were wrong, and that's why we had to go back in again.
So do you think his cabinet convinced him to go to war, or do you think Netanyahu convinced him to go to war?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I don't think Netanyahu could convince Donald Trump to go to war. I don't think anybody could convince Donald Trump to go to war if he wasn't faced with something that was irrefutable. And I think in this particular case, he saw evidence that they had not stopped, that they were, again, focusing on putting together a nuclear weapon. And when that happens, when you have somebody who's crazy with a nuclear weapon, you have a window. You have a window of opportunity to stop it. Because if you let them get a working nuclear weapon, whether it be a dirty bomb or whether it be a missile, then the window is closed and there's nothing you can do except sit back and start counting bodies after they set it off. So you have to respond before they have any capability. Otherwise, they can blackmail you. They can blackmail the world. They can say, no, do what we want, or we're going to drop this someplace and we're not going to tell you where, and you don't know where or when. So you have a window. He took it, and that's why he did it. And I don't think it's because Netanyahu said, psst, we need your help. I think he was shown by somebody in his cabinet. Now, I find that to be a very interesting question, because the question becomes, was he getting accurate information from his cabinet? So I think that's a reasonable question to ask, Linda.
I agree.
Yeah. So I agree. Yeah. And then the question becomes, who in his cabinet? Was it perhaps the Secretary of War? Was it Pete Hegseth? Was it Tulsi Gabbard, NSA? Who was it? I don't believe that it would be Marco Rubio, who seems to be all about, peace more than anything else. So I think you're looking at one of those two. I think Tulsi Gabbard originally said they did not have nuclear weapon capabilities, and then discovered that they did after she had made public pronouncements to that. So that leaves us with the issue of Pete Hegseth. So what do you think, Linda? Do you think that Pete Hegseth could possibly have led the president astray?
I hope not, because Pete Hegseth is a fool. So I would hope I wouldn't be following a fool.
Yeah, I would hope the president would not be led astray by a fool either. And I don't necessarily disagree with your assessment of Pete Hegseth, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's amazing, because I think that I was listening to you, and I'm thinking this person, because I used to listen to WRKO when Howie Carr was a little bit more middle of the road, more working man kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And you seem to present very rationally and and I think that the way you come across is open to discussion, and I think that's what we need in this country, more where we can have open discussion, whether we agree or not agree. And I think that's really the only way this country is going to move forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely hope that's how I present, because I believe that firmly. Exactly what you said. It doesn't mean I don't have my own opinions. It doesn't mean that I don't think that somebody could be wrong and that I could be right, or it doesn't mean that I won't admit that I'm wrong when I find something that I was misled on or assessed incorrectly. I absolutely agree with you, and so I try to give people time. It doesn't mean I'm not going to say no. I don't. I think that's off base, but I will always try to give you the time to put forth your opinion. And I will admit, people have changed my mind about things on more than one occasion. So so thank you for that. That's a big compliment, because that is actually what I hope to do. So I appreciate that, Linda.
One last point I want to make is,
sure,
the supposedly weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not convinced yet that after they bombed last June, that they still had nuclear capabilities.
Okay. Well, you're entitled to that belief. I think we all were hoping that was true. But I don't think we would have gone after Iran unless there was something that you and I and most of the public were unaware of coming down the road at us that the president, the NSA, and so forth were aware of. But I do admit there is the issue of, did the president get accurate information? In the larger sense, do you agree with how the president has handled the Iran conflict? Has he made rational, reasonable decisions in dealing with an untrusting or untrustworthy, irrational opponent? To say yes, that he has done a good job, you have to believe that the president is receiving good intel from his cabinet and his people with which to make those decisions. Do you think he has? Because our last caller, Linda, does not think so. She did not believe that Iran still had uranium and other materials needed to make nuclear warheads after Project Midnight Hammer last spring, because at that time the president said, we got everything, we don't have to worry about it anymore. But in February, the president announced that they still did have the ability, and that's why Operation Epic Fury became necessary and was launched. Do you think the president had good intel? And if not, who's giving him the bad information becomes the question. And if you look at it, who on the cabinet could be responsible for that, then I think that the most obvious choice would be the Department of War representative there, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And so the question becomes, do you believe that Secretary Hegseth has been, how to put it, too optimistic about what is happening in Iran in regard to, first of all, the issue of did they have enriched uranium and why we should have gone in? And then on top of that, is he too optimistic about how we are faring in the war? Has he passed on bad information in regard to how we are doing, so that President Trump is essentially making decisions based on faulty intel, which suits what Pete Hegseth wants to do, maybe, but not necessarily what President Trump would do if he had an accurate picture. So has Hegseth given President Trump a fake impression of the effect of his decisions when it comes to dealing with Iran? Now, the Washington Post, granted, it's not necessarily the most reliable source, but they published a report that Pete Hegseth has provided assessments of the war following the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran that have misled both the public and the president. And, so I don't have no idea if this is correct or not. I'm just telling you that there was a report in the Washington Post. And just to point out on the negative side of believing it, they cite unnamed administration officials. To me, that's usually a red flag. An unnamed administration or anonymous source is another word for putting that, is usually not to be trusted. But the report says that Hegseth's assessments regarding the conflict with Iran were overly optimistic and did not reflect battlefield realities. And one of these sources said that the secretary is not speaking the truth to the president, and as a result, the president is out there repeating misleading information. And this came to a front when the Trump administration reportedly remember when the Iran downed the U.S. F-15 fighter jet, and the subsequent rescue operations were launched after that. And concerns about how Hegseth was relaying information deepened after that, because it raised questions about the earlier claims by Hegseth that Iran had no air defense. And then, bang, they shot down this plane, and there's an F-15 pilot. One's rescued, one's missing for a while, and they got the other one. Well, a military analyst at the Stimson Center told the Post that while the Trump administration had significantly degraded Iran's Navy, Air Force, and fixed missile and radar targets, the F-15's downing is what happens when you have air superiority, but you don't have air supremacy. In other words, you've hurt them, but you haven't exactly knocked them out. And the White House spokeswoman at the time, Anna Kelly, rejected those allegations that the defense secretary had misled the president. And so the president has always been aware that Iran would respond militarily, and he's always had a full picture of the conflict. Nothing has surprised him or our military planners, and that we know who were prepared for any possible contingency. But other U.S. officials, again, speaking on condition of anonymity, so whether how much you believe it or not, said that Hegseth's war messaging extends beyond his claim of U.S. air dominance, that he had described Iran's missile and drone programs as being overwhelmingly destroyed, which contrasted with intelligence assessments indicating that more than half of the missile launchers remained intact and thousands of attack drones were still available. And then at the end of March, when Hegseth said that the number of Iranian missile and drone launches had fallen to a lower level than in any other 24-hour period since the war began, he presented it as evidence that relentless U.S. and Israeli strikes were degrading Iran's ability to sustain attacks. But then the administration officials said that claim was incorrect because there were lower 24-hour launch levels in the middle of March. So that was just, we weren't sending as much. So there were documents that were contradicting Hegseth's claims, and these officials have also criticized Hegseth's focus on launch numbers because they say Iran's strategy appeared to be shifting from volume to more precise and efficient strikes. So it didn't matter that there were less of them because they were more effective. And then, so I mean, these are the complaints that have been about Hegseth's handling and passing through of information to the president. So the issue becomes, is President Trump getting correct information from Hegseth? And every time he admits, goes out there and says, is it that the attack has been an unqualified success? I believe he's sincere, but is he being bad information so that he goes out and says that? That becomes the question. So I guess if you look at it, it comes down to this. Is President Trump operating with bad information, or is this just a liberal media hype trying to undercut President Trump and sow dissent regarding the cabinet? And if you believe that it's true, should Pete Hegseth go? Or, should we just pass this off as wartime propaganda from people who want to hurt Donald Trump? Which do you think it is? Sonny from Carver, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Sonny?
And thank you for taking my call. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And the way I see this, Sandy, is even if we negotiate with Iran, they are not going to abide by the agreement. They're just going to use the time to build up their offensive and defensive capabilities, and we'll be back in there in another 2 years. The only way to end this is to destroy the IRG, and it can be done. The Iranian people want their freedom, and the IRG They're not going to fight. They're going to throw their hands up in the air, just like the Iraqis did, because they don't have the offensive and defensive capabilities to fight us. You know, we did this in Japan after World War II. We can do it here in Iran because the younger people in Iran want their freedom. And as far as the oil goes, just go in there, take the oil, take Kog Island, and once we set up, or once the Iranian people get their freedom, turn everything back over to them. But the only way to end this is to destroy their army. We destroy their air force, we destroy their navy, and we need to destroy the people in the RRG because those people are fanatics, and you're never going to come to any kind of agreement with them.
So I take it that you have agreed with how President Trump has waged the war?
Yes, except I think he's got to finish it. Yeah. You know, as I said,
you weren't happy when you saw the ceasefire was extended again? Did you think that was a good decision or a bad decision?
I think that it wasn't. He stopped in the middle of the job. He needed to finish this because if...
So I know, but we're up against a break. So was that a good decision or a bad decision?
I think it was a bad decision.
Okay. I understand. You can still love President Trump and think he made a bad decision. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your perspective. Thank you, Sonny, for the call. And just by the way, to tell you, Kog Island storage is going to be full soon. So I don't think you actually have to take Kog Island. Has President Trump done a good job in dealing with Iran? Have the decisions been good, do you think? The latest have been to extend the ceasefire actually into infinity or until they agree to negotiate, either prove that he's given peace a chance or to let time for the president's economic attack to destroy their oil refineries and their economy. Has he done a good job is the question. Tommy from Brockton, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Tommy?
I'm well, Sandy. And I hate to admit it, but things are kind of not going as planned with this attack on Iran.
Okay.
And if I were to advise the president, I would drop small arms weapons all throughout urban areas of Iran. Those were the people. And remember one thing about Iran. Most people don't know this. There's 7 different ethnic groups in that country. It's very complicated. And we pay highly educated people in our government to know this. I would fly C-130s over the urban areas and just start dropping small arms, semi-automatic or automatic weapons. Allow the Iranian people to have a civil war and get it over with. I don't want to see American boys dying over there. And if we were to invade, other than Kog Island, where the oil is, to reiterate the point, I don't want to see American boys die over there.
Nobody wants to see American boys die, Tommy.
Yeah,
nobody.
The thing is that the Iranian people do not have the ability to overthrow the IRG or the mullahs because they're unarmed. And the reason why Trump went in, as well as Israel, the timing was right. Millions of people took to the streets. And on social media, none of the highly educated white liberals I went to high school with posted anything about the slaughter fest that went on in Iran. They were more worried about protesters in this country getting shot, interfering with ICE agents.
Yeah, that's
where their outrage is. Our country's divided. But, I don't know if he's got people undermining him. I mean, he certainly had it in his first administration with guys like the Walrus, John Bolton. He certainly was undermining Trump during then. And you've got people with vested interests in the defense industry that love these type of wars.
Yeah, that's true.
But the reality is that if Iran ever does develop a nuclear weapon, it's going to change the whole power structure in the Middle East.
In the world, not just in the Middle East, in the world, Tommy.
No, I fully understand that. No, I don't follow the news anymore. I don't know what's going on with regards to the traffic going through the Straits of Hormuz. Mm-hmm. But I'm really pissed off that evidently Japan has technology that's really good about finding these underwater mines. And they're not helping us. And my dad, after World War II, served in the United States Air Force in Japan. My parents got married in 1955 in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. And I've been to Japan, these flights to the Philippines I have. It's a wonderful place. It's very orderly. But for crying out loud, the Japanese got to help us out. They don't have to help us out militarily, but they can help us out technology-wise. And my biggest fear is that if Iran ever does develop a nuclear weapon, I thoroughly believe they will use it on Israel. And I also thoroughly believe there's a chance that they could give smaller suitcase nukes. We heard that term with the breakup of the Soviet Union, that, we theoretically could have one or two of those go off in the United States. And it was bad enough what box cutters did to this country in 2001. And we're at a tug of war in this country. Mm-hmm. And I really wish somebody in the White House is listening to me and at least run that idea by them. And like I say, it's not hard to figure out how to use an M16, or for crying out loud, it's even easier to use a Kalashnikov. Yeah. It's actually a more reliable rifle.
Well, I think, Tommy, I think that without a doubt, the Crown Prince of Iran has discussed the possibility of aid in dropping small arms. That has certainly been discussed along with some other public people who had, I wouldn't say aid, more like what our former caller or our earlier caller called mercenary groups. I'm sure that's being visited. And I think that if Japan is withholding mine sweeper capability that we don't know about, then Donald Trump may not do anything about that until the Iran conflict is over. But he's not a guy that forgets. So I'm pretty sure that he will do something that will let his displeasure be known with Japan, if in fact that's what they're doing. Because like you, I find that appalling after all of the help and aid and support we've given Japan, including right up until the present day, where we protect them against encroachment by North Korea, that they would not help us no matter what it is that we asked. So, and I'm pretty sure that, and I mean, they may, if it's true, they may feel that their safety numbers, if NATO's saying no, they can say no, but I think they owe us more than a lot of other people do. So I'm pretty sure